Tonight we get a local perspective on the Caitlyn Jenner story. And it is quite a story, and I will tell you, there's one thing that I have noticed about the whole Bruce to Caitlyn Jenner thing. And I deduct this from the phone lines on the radio where you can watch the show or listen to the show. You watch the show, you listen to the radio show. It's the end of the week. On WPRO, weekdays noon to 3. And just from general conversation, you know, the guy's locker room, which is, you know, a biased marketplace, no doubt. But men seem to be really bothered by this Caitlyn Jenner thing. Women, now that's not scientific. That's just my take. And it'd be interesting to get some feedback from you on your state of mind about that, where you can contact us. We'll show you that at the end of the show. Thanks for tuning in. As you know, on Fridays, we kind of gear back and have a more relaxed conversation about things that are going on. And I was off for a couple of days a week or two ago, and we reran a conversation we had with Stephen Alexander, who has become a friend of the show. I'm proud of this guy. He's got guts, and he's got a point of view. And while I don't understand everything about his life, I certainly am willing to be open-minded and listen. And I think he's been able to make that kind of traction. Anyway, Stephen was actually here with Miss World Rhode Island, who showed up this week with her own unique story. And I said, hey, you know, you should come on back and talk about the Jenner thing. He said, absolutely. And so he's here. Let me remind you, if I have to, about what Bruce / now Caitlyn Jenner said the other night at the ESPYs.
I trained hard. I competed hard. And for that, people respected me. But this transition has been harder on me than anything I could imagine. And that's the case for so many others besides me. For that reason alone, trans people deserve something vital. They deserve your respect.
I think everybody deserves respect, but I get it. How you doing, man?
Absolutely, very good. Thanks for having me back on the show.
Now, before we get onto this, if you don't know, Stephen's a coach. You coach softball? No. Soccer? No. I know
soccer, basketball, baseball, tennis.
All that.
I love sports in general.
Right.
I will watch ESPN and find the curling, events at the Olympics. It's just something that I really love. It
competition.
is competition, and you know what? It saved my life. So that's what I gravitate towards.
We should remind, because I'm so familiar with Stephen, you may not be. Stephen was Jen back in his high school days and held the point scoring record for girls basketball at Pontiac. Did they haven't changed your banner yet, have
No,
they?
still haven't.
You were in the Hall of Fame.
I was in the Hall of Fame, the high
you
school
are
Hall
in the Hall of
Fame.
Fame, but they haven't changed your banner to your new name.
No.
Is that battle over, or you just decided that you're going to leave it there?
You know what? It's really up to the community. I think I'm going to leave it to that when the next step happens.
Has there been other steps? Because we last left this when we first met a year or so ago, and I opined that, come on, man. You know, it is. I see the reason for changing the name. Others would argue, you scored the points as a girl. You should remain a girl. Whatever.
Thank you.
But have you? Has there been contemporary conversation, or is it just something that?
There's been a few conversations out into the community, but nothing to the point where there is action that's being taken, and that's where it's at.
Okay. The reason why I think your story is comparable and compelling is that you are a sports person. Bruce Jenner is a sports person, and so there must be a lot of common ground, even though you two have gone
in different directions, I guess, so to speak, on the gender spectrum.
Right.
Yeah.
You were a young lady who is now trans to a man. He is a man who is now a woman. What do you think about my theory, by the way, that men are more bothered by this than women?
Quite possibly. I think that's a great observance that you have. The bottom line for me is if people have issues with it, that's an uncomfortableness that they are dealing with. I think if a person is comfortable with who they are and what they're doing, then this is not going to, disturb them as much. That's how I see it.
There's degrees of disturbance, right? There's the wisecracks, and then there's probably this, aggravated ambivalence. There's the wisecracks, and then there's the anger. I don't know that those are the three spots in the spectrum, but the wisecracks, are just old. I don't find them funny. It's kind of like, yeah, whatever. But I'm not going to stand up and say, don't do that. You know, that's kind of where I think most people are at the. I don't think most people are taking a stand against transgender process.
No, you know, going back to Caitlyn, I think what she is doing is just, it's a wonderful thing to be out there. She is in the public eye. She knows she's using the media as a tool. You know you're going to get negative comments. You know you're going to get the positive comments. But nonetheless, what she's doing is she's drawing us to talk about these issues at hand. She is bringing awareness because she's out there on LGBT homelessness, on the higher suicide rates that we face in the trans community. It's all about treating humanity better. And so when the most marginalized populations are not being treated well because they've got to go through the medical communities and the legal communities to be acknowledged, you know, she's doing really good things.
You know, the word "she" rolls off your tongue completely naturally. I find myself still doing the he/she. I find myself still. I'm just being honest. I've got work to do, I guess, in this. The Bruce to I'm constantly referring to that. I think maybe from, I don't know, historical perspective, rather than dismissing what has happened there. Am I wrong?
That's part of your experience, and that's part of a lot of experiences that are going across America. What I tend to do is, if a person declares themselves as such, in order to be respectful, you know, it's turning on that switch right away and saying, if this is what they want to be called, and if this is the pronouns that they want to, you know, to use in discussion, that's how, you know, life should be. It's a respect to the inner workings of the human being.
And we've talked about this before, but it's I think important to recap. When we first met 2 shows ago, you were working me through this idea. I had asked you, when did you become a he? And you, if I recall, said, I was always a he. Yeah. But when did you finally say publicly, I'm he?
It's a process. It's a long and lengthy process.
There wasn't a day.
There wasn't a day.
Yeah.
I've always known myself to be. It was just the kind of blossoming, so to speak, of having the next steps of confidence. To say, okay, now I can share this information with somebody, and I feel safe with this person, so I'm going to confide in them. And then it's the next level of, you know, when you appeared, like for the first time going back to high school and teaching, you know, knowing people had known me as Jen
Speaking
before.
of that, have you done the reunion thing? Has that come up?
I did my
my
10th year reunion back in 2006, I believe. So I have done it. I've gone back to my high school reunion. I was Steven.
You were Steven.
I came back as Steven. So I've, you know.
How did everybody do with that?
You know, some people, I got really positive results, good for you, and then there are the, you know, the high school mates that don't quite understand it or haven't been educated on, and that's very understandable where they're at.
But speaking of safety and security, one of the things that has been unique about your career is that you're a teacher and you're a coach. And so we've talked about some of this in the past, and I want to move on to some new conversation in the next segment, but remind everybody that you've had a special challenge because you have kids in your custody.
Yeah.
And people might
be a little hesitant and all the other stuff. What I tend to focus on is that sometimes I will put on some blinders in order to navigate the world. But just really knowing who I am, my job is to, you know, engage youth on the conversations that are relevant to them, to get into their worlds and then to talk about and relate to the outside worlds and what's happening now. We're studying history. So that's my job. And I don't bring up the trans issue. Some kids know, some don't, and whatever it is. But it's really, I'm there for them. I'm there to do a job. And that's the same thing when it comes to sports. We are not talking about anything else other than what an individual player's job is to do, what the team's job is to do, what the goals are for the season, all those factors, and that's what I love.
So this mission of going through this evolving, I mean, your Twitter account is evolving, Steven. This evolving issue, you don't jam it down everybody's throat in your real life of occupation.
I can. I
That's
mean,
a credit to you, but I would think that it takes some discipline on your part, that you've really got to park that thing and just go to work.
Yeah.
Right?
That's all it is.
Is it getting better over time, easier over time?
You know, it's about the same. I just know that I love being in that environment, and particularly actually with the students with special needs, the unified programs. I love watching them and engaging them. There's a certain I gravitate towards them a little bit more because there is the innocence, there is the they just want to have a good day, and that's what I want to gravitate towards in terms of making sure that kids are having a good day.
And you're writing a book.
I am. Yes, indeed.
A children's book.
A children's book.
When we come back, we'll talk about the concept. And also a little bit of the difference between what Jenner went through and what Alexander is going through. Stay with us.
I owe a lot to sports. It showed me the world. It's giving me an identity. If someone wanted to bully me, well, you know what? I was the MVP of the football team. That just wasn't going to be a problem. And the same thing goes tonight. If you want to call me names, make jokes, doubt my intentions, go ahead. Because the reality is, I can take it. But for the thousands of kids out there coming to terms with being true to who they are, they shouldn't have to take it.
Of all the things, I have to tell you, be honest with you, I'm completely open to this conversation. When you get to know somebody, like I've gotten to know you a little bit, it really helps your perspective on being patient with the conversation. But I've always thought that Bruce Jenner's Caitlyn is kind of full of it. So there's a thing there, and his whole speech was very indulgent in some ways, I thought. But it was that part that sold it for me. And that is that there are clearly in the homosexual orientation and all of these, the whole LGBT thing. Layers, if you will. There are kids that are struggling. Yeah. And I don't want to see kids hurt themselves. I don't want to see kids pummeled for who they are or who they're trying to figure out they are. And I think that is going to be the thing that keeps America thinking hard about this.
And that's why we need to continue to have these types of conversations. Sexuality is a fluid element in life. We've just kind of boxed ourselves in.
Well, sexuality or orientation, are they the same thing for you?
Well, sexual orientation is different from the gender identity. So gender identity is how one relates to oneself. The sexual orientation deals with the level of attractiveness. So we have two very vast
I've never asked
spectrums
you that.
out there.
So you trans, I mean, you're a man.
Yeah.
Is it polite to ask you what your orientation is?
Sure, I'm straight. I identify as heterosexual.
So you'll date women? Mm-hmm. Okay. I just never, wow, okay, good. I mean, good. I am attracted. I'm not grading the answer.
I'm attracted to women. Mm-hmm.
How's that going?
It's going.
How you doing with that? All right.
It's good. Right now, I'm kind of at a place in my life where I'm focused more on the issues that are at hand.
Gotcha.
So I haven't had a lot of time to date or get to know other women in that way. So
tell me when that's enough. But I'm sure that now everyone's like this. Has that been an easy application? Is that one of the easier applications to your?
No, nothing's easy for me.
Okay, that's the next show. Because I have to think about where I want to be with that, and I want to be sensible and sensitive to your situation. I just think that's it's amazing what you walk into in semi-live television here. Mm-hmm. The kids. You're writing a book. You can't tell me too much about it because of copyright and all sorts of marketing issues, I'm sure. But you have an intention to tell. What's your intention with the book?
Well, the intention of the book actually really is that everybody can play. So, we have our business proposal. We have our 60-page business proposal. We've kicked it to a couple literary agents. I have met with some other folks to give feedback and input. The markets are right for this, and we hope to bring a whole new genre to the children's literature world to get these kind of conversations going
This is
between
what freaks
parents
people out,
and
though.
kids.
This is the conversation that will cause the phones to ring off the hook on the radio, and for me to be stopped saying, "Why did you give him a pass on that? What, you know, this is, we don't need, you know, Billy has 2 mommies in the school system." And I think there's a legitimate concern.
There's
that
always
parents have
concern
about this stuff. So where do you want your publication to fit in to the curriculum world? Is it an
There's a
educational
potential
thing?
for that
Yeah.
based on the business model.
What age do you think kids ought to be talking about this?
Well, it's not that they would necessarily be talking about LGBT issues. This is a book that is geared towards taking the perspective of a team or a person who is struggling with thinking low self-confidence, low self-esteem because they're struggling. Can I play? Can I not play? And we kind of want to make sports a more welcome environment for everybody to at least give it a shot and play. So many kids, so many people don't want to join sports because sometimes the environments can be a little less welcoming and trying to assimilate or fit in with a team. And so this book would pretty much highlight everybody has a strength, everybody has a weakness, but if we find ways in which to work together, it can also be reflective of the work world. We learn through play. That is where we learn things the best and the most. And so I kind of want to be able to take a children's lit book and, you know, take the message of, hey, you know what? We can all work better with one another. Let's find our strengths and weaknesses and play off of that.
I have to tell you, I can't wait to see what you come up with, because it's a fascinating conversation. Just the other day, I had the head coach of URI women's basketball team here, and I tried out a theory on her, and she agreed with me, and that is that women, compete from a different place than men do. That and I learned this by making a mistake as a high school coach years and years ago. I ran my girls like you would run guys when they made mistakes and that kind of thing. And turned out I blew it. Girls compete more excellently from a socially conducive environment. Boys will develop a socially conducive environment from tough competition. She agreed with me. Every other major coach that I've ever talked to, especially women's coaches, agrees with me. Do you agree with me?
I agree that the coach's job, and this is great that you're having these type of inquiries, is to really listen and to pay attention to their players and what each player in their personality, because personalities are different, skill sets are different. If we pay more attention to that, we can then start to put the pieces together. Because what happens if we have a co-ed team? You know, you're going to have to figure out how the male perspective or more of what they gravitate towards that way, and you're also going to have to look at the more feminine perspective. But it's really finding the goodness in each player and the workability that is there. And so I think this is great, Dan, that you're inquiring this.
Yeah. So, but those conversations I'm having are in a box. Girls team, boys team, competitive. Are you talking more about just everyday recreational?
Could be recreational, could be competitive. There are many colleges with their co-ed teams when people are going out and socializing. For everything, at the very low levels of youth sports when kids are first getting involved. My niece is playing soccer right now. It's co-ed. So you're looking at boys and you're looking at girls, and at certain ages they get separated out.
Right.
My thing is, why do we have to separate them out in some respects? And I know that's a very, it's a very radical.
So are you asking
idea.
the question with an answer, or are you asking the question still exploring what the answer
Still
is?
exploring what this kind of all means, what my thoughts are, what I would love to see as a coach in the sports world, while acknowledging, you know, where we are in time and space. And
well, I got more out of the book than I thought I would there. And so I forgot to ask about the Jenner comparison, and we will when we come back. We have one more segment. Don't go anywhere. And that is Laverne Cox, right? That's Laverne Cox, and there's Audrey Middleton, and they are both transgendered. I will tell you that Audrey Middleton, I wouldn't even know. Caitlyn Jenner, But of course, we all know, so you can't do a real judge, right? There's no doubt if I just met you and you said, I'm Stephen Alexander, I'd say, nice to meet you, man. I wouldn't even think twice.
Yeah.
But if I knew who you were as Jen, you know, it's a hard thing for people to kind of deal with. But, you know, we've been through that crap before. You ever thought, though, about transgendered women and minorities? There's
Absolutely.
another problem there?
It is actually. Transgender women of color are the highest population rate susceptible to violence, bullying, all that stuff. In fact, there was the 11th murder this year. I think a woman in Mississippi.
The black community is not tolerant of this. Is that what it is?
No one is tolerant. There's a level of hate there that we as a country need to address, and to say that these trans women of color, their lives are important to us. They bring value to perspectives. They have their talents. They have their brilliance. And why are we, you know, snuffing out lives at an early age? This is it's uncalled for in the country.
Is there also a difference, do you think, in the tolerance for the different transitions from man to woman versus woman to man? Do you think you might have gotten the better switch?
Oh, I most definitely did.
Going from a woman to a man than Bruce Jenner moving to Caitlyn Jenner?
Absolutely. I think the lens that I've been given in life is a straight, white man. I was a white girl, so I know how women are treated sometimes in social situations, which can sometimes, it's less than in social interactions. And so now moving from a straight white man in the social hierarchy of life, you know, people expect me to pay the bills. They're the ones that they, you know, ask for the opinions first. And why does that have to be?
And you've seen it.
Yeah, I've seen it. I mean, it's just this. It's the nature of the way the world works right now. More white men are in power. They are the business owners. They are the sports owners.
And I think that's part of what Caitlyn Jenner is experiencing. It's the wrong flow for people in America.
I think the better thing for America is to embrace diversity, to have conversations with people who are different, that share different looks and different views on life, and to come together. And that's not always the case. You know, that's the harsh reality of life. But I think we learn more from people who are different from us rather than the same.
Where do you think this Caitlyn Jenner story will end?
You know, I think that's up to her. I hope it really, to some degree, it doesn't end in, I want to know what Caitlyn Jenner now does next with her privilege. And that is, I would love to see her go to LGBT youth homeless places. I would love for her to, you know, meet other trans youth and help them out financially, emotionally, giving them a pep talk, but also for her to have conversations with allies too, allies such as yourself, where can other human beings make a difference to help raise and be respectful of trans people and what they go through, because the world is not nice in a lot of respects.
I could talk to you all day. You're doing good, man.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate
feeling
that.
good?
I'm feeling good. It's good.
Yeah. Time makes things better. Yeah. Good work. Last word, and we get back to it. Listen, that was I think that was a constructive conversation. And you know what? I was just as conservative in my mind about these kinds of things way back. But you know what? The older you get, the more open you get. And if you're not getting more open the older you get, well, I would just ask you to think about that. Does that make any sense? See you on the radio at noon, weekdays on WPRO. And back here. Bye.